settled. Thank you. Welcome to the Pinal County Board of Supervisors, August 10, 2022 special session. I hope everyone's had a fun week this last week. I know I have, and I know we all have, so it's certainly been interesting. Let's see, I would like to say that Supervisor Kavanaugh and Supervisor Goodman are attending telephonically. Are they online?
Supervisor Kavanaugh?
Here.
Supervisor Goodman? Supervisor Goodman is absent, Chairman.
All right, thank you very much. And if he does pop in, let us know. Thank you. All right, item number 1 is presentation discussion on the County Supervisor Association of Arizona report. Mr. Sullivan, you are up, and I'm sorry, but good morning. Is your mic? Your mic's not on.
There we go.
There we go.
I think I'm live now.
There you go.
So, as I was saying, good morning, Chairman McClure. Thank you for letting me speak and introduce the CSA staff to you. Members of the board, county attorneys, it's really nice to be in Pinal County. The drive up was beautiful. Our monsoon seasons have greened up all the area, and it's really refreshing to see Arizona get some monsoon moisture.
Could you please just state your name so that they know?
Yes, that's my next talking point. I am
Okay.
Jean Bishop from Mojave County, District 4, Board of Supervisors, and I also have the honor of serving as your CSA president for the County Supervisors Association. I just wanted to say that I wanted to be here this morning to thank you all for your involvement in CSA. Your partnership has been very valuable, and your colleagues, supervisors, you all help make an effective cooperation. So I'm very thankful and grateful for this board's voice at our association. It's our pleasure to work with you and to support Pinal County. Supervisor Miller, I wanted to thank you in particular for your participation and leadership on the CSA's executive board, and also for your participation on the Legislative Policy Committee. So a nice commitment from you, and we appreciate you. As I was saying, the drive down here was beautiful, and it's just amazing how this region is growing and the exciting new businesses that are locating here. I know this board has made a regional economic development a priority, and it's obvious. And I want to commend you and your professional staff for your outstanding leadership in promoting Pinal County. It's a great place to visit, and I'm certain it's a great place to live. Joining me is our team from CSA this morning, Craig Sullivan and Vanessa. As you know, we're here to brief you regarding important issues CSA has been working on this past year. So before we do that, I just wanted to remind everybody and put a plug in for the 2022 CSA Policy Summit that's coming up, October 5th through the 7th in Tucson. It's being hosted by Pima and Santa Cruz counties. So we're looking forward to that. It's our most important meeting of the year, bringing supervisors together to discuss policy issues that'll be important during the next legislative session. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of you there. It should be a beautiful time of the year. And with that, and with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I will like to turn it over to Craig Sullivan, who will walk you through the association's report.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Craig?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, I'm Craig Sullivan with the County Supervisors Association. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to visit with you. I think, as you know, our task today is just to report out on some of the activities of the association. I think it's very important that we spend some time just reporting out to all of you about the work that occurred over the last session, and then start getting organized for all the work that we'll need to do in the next session. But as we begin, I do want to thank you all for your involvement in the association. Mr. Miller, for your leadership in our organization. And I want to thank your professional staff, Mr. Liu, and the team here at Pinal County. There's a very strong collaboration that occurs with all 15 counties, and I'm very grateful for that, and I'm very proud of the network that we all have to work together in county service. I do want to, in particular, acknowledge and thank Tammy Ryle and your legislative consultant, Mark Barnes, who works very closely with us, and they both make sure that we always have the Pinal County story in what we're carrying forward. And so I want to acknowledge their good work as well. The PowerPoint that I have for you walks through some of the work that we do, and I'm not going to go into it in detail, but please do stop if there's something that you want to discuss at any larger detail. But I know you have a lot of work to do this morning, so I'll try to move quickly. But first, for those who don't understand or know who the County Supervisors Association is, let me just briefly share that the County Supervisors Association is a collaboration of the 15 counties where we work together to create a forum to share best practices and information, to develop high-quality information to inform decision-making, and to to be an intergovernmental office with other entities. And that intergovernmental function is very important because, as you know, outside of this county, the legislature, federal government, state agencies all have the ability to impact what you do. And so we're just trying to work together to be an efficient conduit to these other entities. Our leadership is all 61 supervisors, and so everyone's at the table, but we do have a specific leadership chain, and as mentioned, our Legislative Policy Committee. Now, I talked a little bit about how we serve as a forum. This just gives you a sense of what that forum looked like over the last year. We had any number of elected officials come through, and agency heads and technical experts to talk with our board, but we also had specific roundtables with managers and the board as well on relevant issues. And you can see where we spent our time here. Groundwater issues, opioid litigation, broadband, workforce recruitment and retention, which has been a huge issue. We also meet regularly with what we call affiliate groups, and you see them there on the right, and what we rely heavily on those groups to provide good information for us. So this is kind of the underlying collaboration that really deals with best practices and important information that impact your county, and we'll be building out that work plan over the next year to see where we focus our attention going forward. I did want to spend 2 slides just briefly highlighting our data initiative. This is what Ms. Fielder puts together on our team and manages for us. But this is a mountain of information that we are building annually where we can use it to create good information for you and for lawmakers. And this gives you a flavor of some of the information that's on there, but you can do comparisons across the 15 counties on tax rates, revenues, expenditure limits, and other things that are important to kind of get a sense of across the counties. And we share this as well with legislative staff and other folks to see it as when they need information. We're also tracking major cost drivers and doing comparisons between the counties. And so we're looking at the pressure that's occurring with the state's long-term care system. We've been monitoring pension health. As you know, we've been working together for years to get control of the costs on the pension system, and there's been significant improvements in that space. And then we're looking at other cost drivers that impact the counties and trying to figure out how to look at some of these solutions. So moving out of the organization as a forum and the organization as a data collection entity, I do want to just briefly hit some of the key items in the legislative session. And again, I won't drill into all of these, but I will share with you that there are a mountain of bills that come in every year that touch county operations. It is, as administrative arms of the state, the legislature is always making policy changes. And so our primary goal is to make sure they're making informed decisions. For the bills that did pass this year, the effective date will be September 24th. And this is much later than typical because the session went so long. What we are putting out this week, and I was just discussing with Mr. Keller, is a summary of all of the bills that touch county operations so that our county professional staff are able to start operationalizing those in time for the effective date on September 24th. This context slide is just what we talked about when we first entered the legislative session, and none of this will surprise you. These are the big ticket items that you all were talking about when the legislature came together. Probably the most important factor in terms of the pace of the session were the relatively thin legislative majorities. As you know, the majority party likes to do major policy in the budget within its caucus, but given just conflicts within the caucus, they had to have a broader collaboration with the minority party as well. And that's really what dragged the session out. But these items were the major focal points, and we'll drill into some of them to further elaborate. I always like to show this because this is the state's budget situation. And since the counties are very linked to the state's budget, I think it's important for us to track. But the key data points coming out of this one is that they did have an additional tax reduction item of about a little more than $300 million. This is the elimination of essentially the last property tax that the state has. It's called the state equalization rate. That's gone, about a 40-cent reduction on property taxes. They'll have to backfill that money to the schools. They had a mountain of money that was available to them, and they basically spent it all. Overwhelmingly, it went to one-time spending, $5.4 billion of one-time spending over the course of 3 years. And they put in place structural changes in spending of about $1.6 billion. So I always like to draw people's attention to the ending balance here, because if you look in the 3-year projection, the ending balance the state is looking at is about $26 million on a $15 billion budget. That's a de minimis amount in budgeting, and swings in the economy can substantially alter that. What I will share is that the positive thing is they do have a large rainy day fund balance of about $1.4 billion, which is something they didn't have when we entered the last recession. So that's very positive work on their part. This shows you where they spent the money, and it won't surprise you. Education was at the top of the heap. Debt reduction, that was getting after pension debt, just like Pinal County and other counties did. Water, which Mr. Miller was very close to. Transportation, and other items. This slide shows you the transportation allocation, and Pinal County, being a hub of outstanding growth and development, is also high on the priority list for transportation. You all work closely with the legislature. Mark Barnes on your team, we're interfaced with them regularly to secure resources. The overall spend was about $1 billion. $400 million of that goes to the widening of I-10, as you all know, and Mr. Shope helped secure that. And in our drive down here, we were excited about that improvement coming online. But you also had some key other investments that I know are very important to you as well, and your team worked very diligently on that. These are some county-specific items. We are still working as an association on the cost shift to Maricopa and Pima for paying the State Department of Juvenile Corrections. You used to have to pay this too, but working with your delegation, the rural counties have been relieved. But for reasons that I won't get into here, we are still working on that for Maricopa and Pima. We were able to secure a grant program for dependency-related matters. We'll be marketing that. Once that comes up and running, that's about $2 million. And we were able to get a small change in how they do JP salaries, which will save the county some money. What did not occur was the policy change we wanted related to probation officers. Now, probation officers they're state employees, and they're largely funded by the state. The state has made some policy changes where they're still asking you to set the salaries for probation officers, but they're only paying up to a certain amount. And I know this is kind of minutia, but it sets up the conditions for greater exposure to the county general fund of more court costs. And so this is something we're going to have to fix because, as you know, court costs have really bled into your budget significantly.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman? By chance, do you have that slide of the court costs and how much the counties have been increasing the amount of money? And I know that doesn't tie exactly to the probation department, but overall, the court system is something we need to address for the future because, like you just said, it will continue to eat into our budgets as we move forward.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor, I don't have that chart with me, but you're right. It's dramatic.
It is.
And what it shows is that the independent judiciary, which needs to be funded and is really a state function, most of their resources, the growth, has all come from the county. The state has not been chipping in to fund that state obligation.
And that's from probation officers all the way through judges.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, anyway.
And so it is a trend that we have to look at. It puts pressure on your property taxes. We did have a concern about some cost drivers that were going into the state budget. And we weren't arguing that the state should not look at those policy changes, but we were saying, if you're going to increase our costs on one side, let's get some relief elsewhere. And so we put on the table the JP salary change and then elimination of 2 legacy healthcare items. Those are at the bottom. The only one that was adopted was the JP piece. But I do want to highlight those cost drivers because I think they're important for constituents to be aware of. So these are policy changes that the state made that will impact your local operations. And the counties have a statutory cost-sharing arrangement with the state on this, and it is their role to make policy changes here. But Pinal County will see about a $5.3 million increase in payments to the state's long-term care system. Why did that occur? Because credibly, the long-term care system is having difficulty hiring people. And so the state wanted to increase the provider rates. That bleeds down into your county general fund. And if you look at the bottom line, the copper line, you can see that for several years, the county costs were flat, but they're really starting to spike. And so this is a cost driver we're going to have to look at. The other cost driver I wanted to flag is related to the court system and Superior Court judges' salaries. There has been a concern about recruitment and retention in the judiciary. That's all fair. And so they made a change to the Superior Court judges' salaries, which you see tracked over time here, and the county funds a portion of that. And so the increase will be $561,000 to Pinal County. So these were some of the reasons that we said, well, if you're going to cause these increases, let's find partial offsets elsewhere. Let's just not keep stacking mandates up. So I think we're going to continue to work on that going forward. And then I wanted to flag as well, DOR collects sales taxes. They are putting in place an updated collection system, and the state legislature tagged each of the jurisdictions to pay a portion of that. It's fairly small for Pinal County. So these are some other buckets that the legislature wanted to fund that support counties, but they're in policy areas that they prioritize. On the left, you can see resources going for county attorney diversion. In the smaller counties, the sheriff's stipend item was put in this bucket, and that's something that we're working on implementing as we go forward. On the right side, you can see a grant program that we asked for. That is about $10 million of ongoing resources for cybersecurity grants. This is something that we're encouraging all of the counties to avail themselves of. And there were a lot of resources put out there for border security grants that the sheriffs can go after, and appropriations for forestry and fire management, which matters a lot in our counties. There were also a lot of dollars put out there for election-related matters, and I know the recorders, county attorney side, will migrate through that to see where those dollars can be pulled down here locally. These are some bills that we took in. Besides the budget that we work on, we also take bills in that our clients bring forward for us. Of the 5 bills that were viable, 4 got enacted. Overwhelmingly, and I'll move through these next few slides fairly quickly, what our team does, Robin Hilliard, Jacob Emnett, and Vanessa Fielder, is really focus on bills that come in the process and getting information in. And there was an enormous amount of work in this space. This is what our LPC does on a regular basis. Mr. Miller, you were at the table every Friday for that. These are some of the policy areas that we work in. It gives you a sense of the diversity of touch points that the counties have and various stakeholder meetings that our team participated in. It won't surprise you that election issues were still prevalent at the legislature. 140 bills came into the process. Overwhelmingly, they were winnowed down. I do want to acknowledge the good work of our colleague organization, ACO. They work with the recorders and the election officials. They bring technical information forward, and I think they did a really nice job on that. I want to be very clear. Our lens on election issues is really about implementation and process. It's not about the larger political issues. It's really about how we do the work. COVID-19 emergency response, you're familiar with that. There were a series of legislative changes to county and city authority as well as the state authority as it relates to emergency powers and issues related to vaccine requirements and mask requirements. This slide shows a couple of important buckets, so I'll start in the lower left as it relates to water. House Bill 2037 is a bill that you all worked on and Mr. Barnes shepherded forward for you. Mr. Miller, I want to commend you for your work on the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. I was in that stakeholder meeting when they first revealed it to us, and you immediately went to Pinal County's interests and made it known from the beginning, and I think you made a lot of progress on that. It was... It seems like a long time ago. It really does. But we saw a lot of work in vacation rentals, residential zoning for park model trailers, which your county helped us a lot with in terms of crafting language. And then, of course, fireworks seems to come back every year. I did want to flag this, property tax changes. So what's unique about the state and the counties is that the state is largely funded by income taxes and sales taxes. The counties are largely funded by property taxes. Who controls the property tax mix? The state. And so while they don't see the direct financial consequences, they do have the policy governance. So they've been on track to change the relative mix of the property tax base, shifting more from commercial to homeowners. And that's done, in their view, to promote economic development. And that's a good thing, and we think that is a possibility. But it does mean that it erodes the base a little bit and puts some pressure here locally. And there were two major items. One was lowering the commercial assessment ratio for businesses. So we've gone from 25% several years ago, and we're going to be down to 15% when this current schedule occurs. In a region like this with the growth, it may be a de minimis impact, and it might really pay on the economic development side, but we'll have to monitor that. They also spent a lot of time on pension debt repayment, like the counties have too. I did want to flag a new tool that's on the table. It is a Policy 1082, where jurisdictions are able to prepay their state retirement, their ASRS. As you know, we've been focused on the public safety pension, EORP, and CORP. This is a tool that helps with the Arizona State, the employees in ASRS. And then the last slide is just going forward. These are items that will be on the ballot that members will, or the electorate will consider. Voter identification requirements for mail-in ballots, Lieutenant Governor, and then the fire districts were successful at getting a sales tax referred to the ballot, and so that'll be considered as well. As we go forward, we're meeting with the managers next Friday to talk about our upcoming legislative agenda, and I know counties are submitting ideas to us. I do want to echo what Ms. Bishop said. Please join us for our legislative summit, our policy summit that'll be in October. It's really where we get organized for this next legislative session, and we'll have a lot of work to do as we go into that process. So we need your voice at the table. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I took a lot of time, but I do want to thank you all for your partnership and your patience as I went through this, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Supervisor Kavanaugh?
No.
Did Supervisor Goodman pop in? No, that wasn't him. Okay. Go ahead, Supervisor Miller.
I don't really have a question. I do just want to thank Craig Sullivan and his staff and everybody for the process we go through with the legislative summit, and then breaking it down on what we're going to focus on and move forward with those. I might be sick and demented, but I enjoy the phone calls at 8 o'clock at night from Mark Barnes or somebody. You know, hey, Steve, can you do this in the morning? And I've even heard from you at odd hours, Craig. So, but it is very effective. I think it's money well spent along with this organization, and I think we're a pretty effective group at the legislature on a regular basis. So thank you for all your hard work, and I enjoy being part of the team. So I just want to say that.
All right. Yes, thank you for your hard work, and Supervisor Bishop, thank you for showing up and for the work that you're going to do. We'll just thank you ahead of time. No other questions, I don't.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. All right. Item number 2, work session on case PZ-PA-006-22, a major comprehensive plan amendment proposal requested by SWCA Environmental Consultants. Ms. Tokar, you are up.
Good morning, Chairman, Vice Chair, board members. We are in this time of the year where the major comprehensive plan amendments are up for the first, I would say, the public hearing, which is scheduled 1st of September, which is the CAC. So this is a work session introducing you to this year's comprehensive plan amendments for 2022. These are the major ones, which happen once a year. So just to give you an overview of the schedule, June 10th was the start of the 60-day agency review period. The work session with P&Z happened July 21st. And this is the work session with the Board of Supervisors. We have the 60-day period for the agency review, which ends on 12th August, and the first upcoming Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, September 1st. So we have 5 major comprehensive plan amendments this year. The first 2 are the solar projects, and the next 3, the first 2 are outside applicants, and then the following 3 are the county-initiated items. And I will go over the first 2, and the rest of the 3 would be taken over by respective planners. So to begin with, the first one is the CLO Solar and Storage Project, requesting redesignation of 923 acres from moderate low-density residential to employment for green energy production for the large-scale photovoltaic solar generation facility. The second one is the Cameron Solar Project, requesting redesignation of 888.06 acres from moderate low-density residential and open space to employment for green energy production for the photovoltaic solar plants. The third one is a creation of land use classifications for Pinal County compatible use implementation and to apply accompanying updates to plans minor comprehensive plan amendment regulations. The fourth one is creation of special districts land use classification for Arizona state lands and to apply accompanying updates to the plan's minor comprehensive plan amendment regulations. And the last one is regarding wind energy under the energy element, Chapter 7, energy section. We would like to update that portion of the comprehensive plan for Pinal County. To begin with, the first 2 solar projects, this is just to give you, this is an illustration of the map of the Pinal County, sharing the land use designations that have been designated for solar projects. And one can see that they have been interspersed all across. This is not a complete picture. It's still in the making. There would be some additional I would say identifications of similar land use designations, but it's work in progress. But I just wanted to give you a kind of a map that gives an overview. And as I said, that was just an illustrative illustration of this. Approximately 20,000 acres for this land use has been classified under green energy production till date. And for I3 zoning, so which has come to the level where the solar projects are rezoned, is approximately 2,500 acres. Again, it's just a perspective of how much land use we have allocated for green energy, and of which 2,500 has been for the solar projects.
Question, Supervisor Miller. Sorry.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, before we get too far, sometimes these green energy comprehensive plans are designated green energy employment, and sometimes the employment is not added to it. What's the differential? I mean, in the past, I've seen these projects presented without the employment component to it. Do you know what triggers that?
Have I not? I'm just thinking.
To employment for green energy.
So when we say.
They don't employ a lot of people.
Right. I do understand that, and there's that was.
I have seen projects come through that don't have that component to it. So I was just curious as to what triggers that.
I am not sure, but basically the designation is from this to employment for the green energy. The land use designation is employment, and it is green energy production for specifically for that.
Okay. Well, we'll dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. I will look into that and define that more clearly also moving forward.
Thank you.
Chairman, before Sangeeta continue her presentation, if I can just announce for the record that Supervisor Goodman is on the line.
Oh, okay. Thanks for joining us, Supervisor Goodman. You there?
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
There you go. Okay. Sorry, Ms. Dokar. Go ahead.
So the first solar project is the CLO solar project, and again, it is a solar project requesting redesignation of 923 acres from moderate low density to employment for green energy production for large-scale photovoltaic solar generation facility. Area is 923 acres. Location is southwest intersection of West Highway 287 and South Highway 87. Owners are multiple owners: Leisure Investments, HA 1070 LLC, Eloy 660 LLC, and we have Fato Limited Partnership LLC, Piemontes Direct LLC, Will Gluck LLC. So these multiple owners, and applicant is Patton Solar and Solar Development LLC. Amy Smolin is the representative for the applicant. This is the location of the CLO solar project, showing the location, central Coolidge area, and as mentioned, south of 287 and west of the 87. The comprehensive plan showing existing land use designation, moderate low density residential. It shows two of these. It is employment that is proposed, and the proposed land use designation is the green energy production. Again, the vicinity map showing the location, showing surrounding land uses, central Coolidge on the eastern portion. Northern portion is general rural. We have state land to the west, and again, south is Coolidge. The CLO solar project showing the aerial, largely undeveloped area, and for the whole and around surrounding areas also not developed. There's not much development or settlements or planning that has happened. Open land, largely agricultural. The zoning showing GR zoning. Again, zoomed down of this whole project area, having multiple parcels, state land to the west. South is Coolidge, northeast is Coolidge, and again, GR to the north and east. This is the existing infrastructure and showing basically a map that was shared with existing transmission lines is 115, 230, 500 kV lines crossing at the northern portion of the project for this, and just giving an overview of the area and the portions, basically trying to show the regional infrastructure that is existing. Current conditions: active and fallow agricultural area, relatively flat topography, no sensitive biological resources, no perennial surface water, wetlands, or impacts to endangered species. Solar generation is for 150 megawatt of battery storage, including solar array, PV modules, standard infrastructure that includes the battery energy storage system, the operations and maintenance building, and associated infrastructure. The timing of the development as projected is end of 2025. Any questions specific to this project?
Supervisor Kavanaugh, Supervisor Goodman, do you have any questions?
No questions.
Nobody wants to talk
I'm
by
good.
side.
Who else is on the line here? Supervisor Goodman, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Thank you. Going to the next project. This is the second solar project that has come up this year. Proposal is from Aurora Solar LLC. It's a subsidiary of Avangrid Renewables, proposing a major comprehensive plan amendment proposal to redesignate 888 acres from moderate low density residential and recreational conservation to green energy production and recreation conservation zone. The area that it covers is 888 acres. Location is half-mile north of City of Coolidge. We have owners, the Church of Jesus Christ for Latter-day Saints. Applicant is Kristen Golans from Aurora Solar LLC. The location for this is north of the Coolidge and south of Florence. One can see this is northern to the prior project that was shared, central Pinal County. This map shows a comprehensive plan. Existing land use designation is, we have two existing land use designations. This moderate low density residential, 1 to 3.5 dwelling units per acre. And the southern portion is the open space and the recreational conservation zone. Proposal is green energy production and recreation conservation. This is just to give you an idea that the portion that is part of the recreation and the conservation zone would remain the same, which is to the south. And one can see that the area in the next portion is largely, undeveloped. GR to the west, south, east portion. Northern portion has a CR3 zoning, and an aerial that would show this, totally undeveloped land at this point in time, no development that has happened surrounding this large parcels. The southern portion, one can see that as a wash going, and that's what is going to remain as the conservation zone. This is the zoning existing, again, showing the GR zone, the CR3 to the north. South portion of it is state land, however, largely surrounded by GR zone, and it's part of the Coolidge. The north portion showing the Florence, that is further north of the project area. This map is showing the existing infrastructure, and again, it is trying to, again, look at what is the existing transmission lines and how they are in with respect to the location of this project. One can also see that the area, the river canal, which goes to the south of this, is where this whole area of conservation is going to be. The 115 kV transmissions lines to the north western portion, and one can also see that the portion at it kind of abuts this on the junction, so they would have to build a portion for transmission for this project. The Cameron Solar Project, again, showing a site plan. This is a draft layout, and basically, again, subject to changes, but this is this was a point where this has been now shared with other divisions within community development, especially with the Open Space and Trails Director, to look at how the conservation area, the open space, would be still ensure that it is maintained and would remain the same for the county. Largely, one can see it is in the northern portion, the solar panels that have been laid out. The substation to the southeast portion may require to be moved. However, that is still as part of discussion, and this is still a draft plan that has been shared by the applicant. Again, current conditions, active and fallow agricultural area, relatively flat topography. Location is of a Gila River with a 100-year floodplain southeast of the project area. There's lack of sensitive biological resources. There's a proximity of existing electrical transmission infrastructure, substations with APS, SRP, and Valley Farm substations. Proposal is solar generation for 100 megawatt of battery storage to include the standard solar facility that would be PV modules, battery storage, O&M building is associated infrastructure. Timing of development, expected commercial date is again December 2025. And I'm open for any questions.
Are there any questions from the board?
I don't have a question.
Supervisor Miller, you have a comment?
I do have a comment.
Go ahead.
It's not a wash. That's the Gila River.
It
That runs through there.
Oh, it looks like a wash. It looks like a wash.
It's the portion that is abutting at on the sides is portion of the, that was what was mentioned by.
One of those maps I saw in very fine print, it shows that
So-
it's the Gila River. So anyway, just a comment, and I would, if I was going to put any investment in there, I'd make sure that it doesn't get washed out someday.
Okay. Any other questions? Supervisor Goodman?
No, sir. I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Supervisor Kavanaugh?
No questions.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Doka.
I just had one clarification. So the question that was asked regarding employment and green energy production. So the land use employment is different, and green energy production is different. So when we say green energy production, it is specifically for the solar projects. That is what is the land use designation. Employment would include, moving forward, it would have different uses in terms of industrial uses that are otherwise included for other industrial purposes. So employment is separate. When we say green energy production, it is only specific to the solar projects.
Does that, yeah, go ahead. Certainly, Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what you're saying is we're going to change the comprehensive plan to employment solar. But if they just put solar in there, that's okay. But maybe before they get the solar built, they want to do something in employment. They've already got the new land designation. I mean, is it either or?
No. So when we say green energy production, it is only green energy production for solar facilities. So employment land use designation includes all kinds of zoning categories. However, for green energy production, it is only I3, which moves forward for zoning when it goes forward. Well, employment has other zoning categories that could be included.
How is that? Does that look like a wash or a river to you?
I guess I don't understand. I mean, I'm sorry, but if it's employment, you know, if we change the comprehensive plan to allow the solar in there, and it says employment solar, then you can also do something else with that land that would be an employment. And I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure that's what we're doing.
I think we're going to get clarification.
Supervisors, just to clarify, so the proposal is to send the whole thing to green energy production. So the employment part of it is not going to be part of the proposal at the end of the day. So there is
Okay, because okay.
It just
I
says
don't want to dwell on some past issues with other people that tried to do something similar a couple of years ago. But I just need an understanding. We're either going to. Why do we put employment on there if we're not going to? If we're just focusing on green energy, solar, that's the only thing you can do with it.
Right. We'll make sure that's clarified as part of future presentations. But that yellow box there, if approved, will be green energy production for solar only.
Okay.
And just to clarify, this had 2 land use designations, and probably that is what the confusion was. It has 2, employment and moderate low density, which is going for the green energy production, if you look at the map for Cielo Solar.
Okay. Well, okay. We'll work on semantics
It's
later.
going from existing to proposed. If I'm looking at that slide,
That's correct.
Yeah.
it's saying,
That's how it
right, it
reads
says
now.
that, and then now it's just going.
Employment's gone.
Yes, the employment's gone. Okay, maybe we're straight. All right.
All right, thank you.
And I would say on this, is that the end of your presentation?
That's correct.
Telephonic appearance, we have the applicants online, Tetra Tech and Avangrid Renewables. They're there for questions. Are they online?
They are now.
They are now. Okay. We have Colin Agner and Krista Deering from Tetra Tech. Is that correct? And we-
Yes, Colin Agner with.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for Tetra Tech? Okay, hearing none. Are there any questions for Avangrid Renewables? Kristen Golan, Tyler Huff, Burr, and Marcella Patrick? They're on the line. Are there any questions? Hearing none. That's it. Okay, well, thank you very much for being online. We appreciate it. All right, item number 4, work session on case PZ-PA-008-22, county-initiated major comprehensive plan to amend select portions of Pinal County Comprehensive Plan. Go ahead, Mr. Olguin.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, board members. Gilbert Olguin, I'll be giving you the next couple of presentations. And these are not solar projects. These are military and the state land new creation and special district will be covering. The first one's with it's with the National Guard. It's the implementation portion of the what we call the JLUS, the Pinal County Joint Land Use Study that was done back in 2017. Here we go. So you read that part, so I'll just skip on through. So this is more focused on something the county really hasn't had before, which is land use designations that help protect National Guard installations. More specifically, 4 of them that we have. Back in 2017, it was noticed that we were... There we go, I got it. Thank you. We had noticed that the Guard... Thank you. Sorry. I think we're ready now. We had a lot of homes that were coming into play within proximity to these installations, and it became such a problem that the National Guard came out to the county and said, "Hey, this encroachment is starting to really put a crimp on how we train the military, and we got to at least get in front of it, not stop it, but at least get in front of it and try to work with those that are moving towards us and let them know that we're here and have been here for 20, 40, 60 years." And so that's how it started back in 2017. And then the actual vision document that we put together, which I got a chance to be part of with a really good team, we came up with a lot of great ideas, actual usable ideas from stakeholders that said, hey, if we're going to do something like this around these 4 areas within Pinal County, these are the things that we need to look at and to work for. Different kinds of zoning, larger lots, make them aware of these helicopter training, the Bambi basket training that they have. These were the things that came out in that visionary document. So staff took it the next step and reached out to try to get another grant. We did, and we're here in front of you today with the compatible use implementation where we actually get to develop the land use designation policy documents and zoning ordinance. Now, this isn't for the ordinance. That's coming at a later date. But today, we're bringing to you the concept, if you will, of creating a different chapter in our current comp plan that will tell developers that, hey, if you want to build next to these installations, there's the policy you have to follow. What does that mean? Well, staff won't support your case unless you follow what it says, just like we do with any other development. it's crucial for staff to have this because it helps us help the board members make an informed decision. These are the areas in question, are the ones that we're talking about today. The Rittenhouse Training Site, the Florence Military Reservation, the Picacho Peak Stage Field, and the Silver Bell Heliport. I would say that the one that really brought this into serious concern, or sort of talking about it, was the Rittenhouse Training Site. If you look at this, to the south of it, you have this essentially modern-day subdivision that's right up against this training facility. This is a problem because these guys do a lot of helicopter training up there by that canal at night and during the day. And we get a lot of complaints from these people saying, I can't sleep. Well, now with this level of policy, we can tell developers that you're going to have to disclose this information when you sell there. And it's also going to allow us through the zoning ordinance, when that comes to you in the future, the ability to say these are the zones that are allowed there. If you want to change that, you have to go back to this document, and you've got to make that change in the comprehensive plan. So staff, as myself, is really excited to be part of this because it does allow us at least have a voice in this, and it allows the state land and the National Guard to have their say as well. Plus, we get to take the visionary document statements that are out there that we put together back in 2017 and finished in 2019, 2000, and get to use that to help us create this. So,
Mr. Elgin, hang on just a second.
Yes, sir.
Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gilbert, did I hear you, though, is this one of the facilities that's been there for 20 years?
The exact, how long it's been there, I'm not exactly sure, but yes, it's been
There a
quite
long
while.
time.
Yes, sir.
Before the houses.
1940s.
1940s.
Yes, sir.
Before the houses.
Yeah, a lot of these
Now,
installations
because
were
I
there
know,
before
now
that.
when they built those subdivisions, though, they had to disclose that in their public report. Do we ever tell anybody, did you read your public report? I mean, because that's the whole purpose of having that, so that they know that they're buying a house next to a heliport.
Yes.
I mean, so are we following up on that and making sure if those public reports need to be amended or something to that effect? I mean, I think we should really. There have been, how do I want to say, there's a procedure to inform the public of their purchase, and so anyway, I think that I'd like to really know that that's in those public reports.
That's a great question. Staff will look into that and provide you more detail at the next meeting.
Okay, because I mean, it's just super important. That,
Yes.
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
I have no question.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, well, I'm sorry. I thought Supervisor Kavanaugh had the question. Supervisor Goodman.
yes, thank you. I appreciate that. So, Gilbert, I'm going along with Supervisor Miller on this. I mean, this issue's been going on for a long time now, and has been for several years. And I'm wondering, why in the world haven't we had things in place? And in fact, I'm kind of amazed that you didn't even have an answer at this meeting right here as to why this all happened. Because this stuff has been, how they even got those homes there without people even knowing it is just, and people tell us all the time that these subdivisions were put in there without them actually knowing that this facility was there, and it's been there since the 40s. I knew it was there for a long time, but I didn't even know it was clear back into the 40s when they put it there. And I've been around a long time. Surely not back in the 40s, but close to
it. Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Gilbert, I really applaud what you're doing with this grant and these things for projects going forward. We do need to be very diligent and make sure these developers are following whatever guidelines you're coming up with. I mean, I applaud that effort. But again, I just want to go back.
Yes.
I have a feeling that it's just like trying to enforce CC&Rs, which we do not enforce. And it may fall into a category similar to that. But in all fairness, those public reports should have identified those, and that statute has been around a long time. So anyway, Just
Chairman,
thoughts.
sorry, board member.
Supervisor Goodman. Go ahead.
And to the point of what Supervisor Miller's making, though, if these things have been around so long, how come they haven't been put out there? Who's responsible for making sure the messaging is there and the right information is given to the public? Who's responsible for that? I guess that's really where I'm at, looking at somebody's missed the boat, whether it's the developer, the real estate agent, or whatever the case may be. Somehow this messaging has not been put out there very effectively. I guess that's where I'm at. Thank you.
It's called buyer beware.
Excellent statement, sir. And I agree with what you said. The name of the contact that we use, that we have right now, is Dorinda Coleman. She's the planning and entitlement specialist for the National Guard. I wanted to mention real quickly, one of the things that staff didn't realize is that this process has brought Arizona State Land and the National Guard to work together at the table, which I thought was surprising to me, because at the time there wasn't a lot of that. So this has really helped us kind of bridge that gap and bring both sides together to meet in the middle. As you know, State Land is involved with trying to sell property for schools, as National Guard is trying to protect this great state of ours, the country, I should say. So now that we have them at the table and they're playing nice, it's been real helpful for us. And as I mentioned earlier, there's 4 installations, and I'll briefly cover them. The Florence Military Reservation, this gives you a kind of a good perspective on where it's at and how far the reach goes. One of the things that we're covering in this document is what they call military compatibility areas. And that doesn't just cover the actual area, like the pink area you see there. That it goes as far as the blue area, where that's how far some of their actual flight training goes, and other types of training that they have. So it gives you a good understanding of how far. They're also talking about having a military compatibility area of airspace, so they can have it to where this is a protected airspace for their training. So this is the Silver Bell Army heliport. Sorry. And this one here is actually in connection with the Picacho Peak. They're kind of within proximity of each other. They do a lot of helicopter training back and forth from each side. And once again, we're real excited about bringing this forward and having a new chapter in the comp plan that is focused on these facilities and providing policy for developers and for the board and for staff to use when these decisions for houses are coming through. The thing that's protected these properties, and I'll go back to the major map that shows you all of them, is the fact that a lot of these areas are in state land, so there's no houses coming as of yet, but they will. And this gives the county, more so the actual board, the ability to help cushion the blow of those houses coming in, and what kind, what sizes, what types are going to be in those areas. Because honestly, on the Rittenhouse training facility, high density staff wouldn't agree to that. It's too noisy. They use it too much. So this is a great tool. Staff's excited about. The consultant has been busy at work, and like I said, in addition to that, the grant that we were able to receive for this project is also going to pay for the follow-up document, which would be the zoning, which then has teeth in regards to what land uses or uses can actually go on these properties. So, did you have any questions for staff?
Are there any questions from the board? Supervisor Goodman?
I'm good, thank you.
Supervisor Kavanaugh?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, thank you. No questions.
Perfect.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
O'Keefe. Don't go away.
No, sir.
Number 5 here, work session on case PZ-PA-009-22, the county-initiated major comprehensive plan amendment. Mr. O'Gean, you're back up. Glad to see you.
Board members, Chair, Vice Chair, Gilbert O'Gean, I would love to bore you to death on this next case.
Thank you so much.
But we have had the ability to bring in some additional talent that's going to help us move through this project and provide additional feedback. And he is in the audience. I'll bring him up in a minute. We have Michael Baker here today in the audience, and we did bring them in to help us with this special district that's specifically for state land pieces only. Matt, would you come up front?
Mr. Baker, welcome.
Thank you, Gilbert. Thank you, Chair, fellow supervisors. Matt Kleisico with Michael Baker International. So I am the consultant to bring forward the boring content. But no, seriously, this is actually, I think, a very innovative approach that the county is exploring relative to planning and managing state trust land. And specifically, the purpose associated with this is, I think the board is very familiar with. Pinal County has a very significant portion of its land area dedicated to Arizona state trust land. And specifically, because of that comprehensive amount of land, it's very important that the county did diligently, if I can get that out, explore how we approach long-range planning for those areas. Also, the lease and disposition of state trust land is governed by strict statutory regulations. So one of the more key ones of that relative to the disposition of trust land is that trust land must go up for auction. And so the ultimate use and buyer is sometimes not known early on in the development process. Further, state statute also requires that counties coordinate with state land department to ensure harmonious planning. And so periodically, the county and the state land department will obviously coordinate and discuss what the long-range planning objectives and needs are within the county. So with all of that has occurred, the county saw an opportunity to better accommodate growth and economic development by developing this special district within the comprehensive plan that would only be applicable to state trust land. Now, I certainly can go into greater detail about the specific text edits, and if the chair or other board members would like me to go into that, we can. And I know that language is in your packets, but there's basically three specific text areas that we're looking to amend. Within Chapter 3, we would be discussing the state land properties within the county and explaining their prevalence within the county. Chapter 3 would establish the reason for the description and the description of the special district, which is very key to recognize that this is just creating the tool. This request does not include taking any trust land into this new special district. What would require or what would happen is basically a three-phased process. First, it's creating this special district. Then, from that special district to enact it, the state land would have to come forward at some point in the future and propose land to be reclassified to this special district, and that land would have to stand on its own merit and justify whether it is appropriate for this district or not. So this request does not say that all trust land is going to go into this special district. It is simply another tool in the county's toolbox to manage certain trust lands if at a future point in time it's determined that they're appropriate. Now, the key about that consideration is the special district would allow greater mixture of land use types. So right now, as you heard in some of the previous comprehensive plan amendment cases, obviously there's specific land use types within the county that allow a select type of uses within each of those categories. What this special district would do is recognize that trust land doesn't necessarily always know what the development request is going to be for a specific piece of property. The other condition is that we can only conduct a major comprehensive plan amendment once per calendar year. And so what occurs is that sometimes when trust land may be appropriate for disposition, the county does, or the state land department doesn't move forward with that because the timing of it to put the land up for auction doesn't fall in with that once per calendar year major general plan amendment. So what we're trying to do is right-size the process and say that can we, for select properties, place them in this special district that would give a range of both residential and non-residential uses, and then the key would be implementing this would be at the zoning level and would only allow property owners to zone to 3 specific districts, which are those districts that require a master plan with them. So that is the very key to making this request assured that we protect the quality of life within Pinal County and the needs of residents that might be in proximity of these lands. So by requiring them to go through the process of only being able to zone to these master plan zoning districts, they have to provide all of the detailed reports to go along with that to determine if the final identified land uses are appropriate in this area. So that is the specific nuance to this request, is that we are only establishing the tool at this point in time, and then at later point in time, the state land department would come forward and identify select properties at their discretion, and then state their case in front of the board to determine if the county feels that this special district is appropriate. Now, I'll just conclude my comments, and then I'm happy to answer questions I like to show this map that identifies, obviously, the county, and for everyone in the audience, the blue captures what is state trust land within Pinal County. So you can see it's a large footprint, but we recognize that some land uses within the county on state trust lands are appropriate the way it's currently defined. And so this tool is just looking at another opportunity to manage land within the county in a way that is more advantageous to economic growth, as well as planning for population increases and recognizing that state land is a key component of that whole conversation. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair, and answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The once-a-year availability to change a comprehensive plan, is that statutory, or is that just in the rules that we've set up?
That is statutory. Now, as a little asterisk or disclaimer, just this last legislative session, so we recognize within statute there is guidelines for cities and towns and guidelines for county. And counties have comprehensive plans, cities and towns have general plans.
Right.
With both of those, they have major amendments to a comprehensive plan or a general plan. In cities and towns within state statute, that once per calendar year was revised and is not a specific requirement now. However, when they made that change, they did not make the change in the county requirement. So the once per calendar year still applies at the county level, but as of this year does not apply at the city and town level.
Let's go get Mr. Sullivan back here, because I do think that's, I mean, seriously, that should be considered being revised similar. Because it does, I don't know, handicap's the best word, but timing is just almost impossible to hit perfect.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Supervisor Miller, because that is kind of the crux of the purpose behind this is it's more of a timing thing and recognition of the state land department's process. And so when the state land department is sometimes identifying a change in land use, the public's response is often to ask, well, what are you planning for? And the state land department has the challenge of, well, we auction the land, so we can't promise you that is, we just anticipate that that's the appropriate land use here, but we can't guarantee that. And so this is trying to take that into account to put the proper information requirements at the proper stage in the process.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting too is that the detail has to come forth as we go down the pike, and it kind of, you're either in or you're out kind of thing. In other words, if they're going to spend the kind of dollars for the detail that we're asking for at that point, it's not going to be cheap, and they're probably committed to the deal at that point. So,
right,
I like the structure.
And I think the staff was very obviously sensitive, and one of the key factors right up front was to ensure that we protect the residents' ability to be informed and to comment on requests relative to these trust lands. So that's why we did not say you can zone to any zoning category, because those don't necessarily require the robust submittal requirements that these master plan zoning districts do.
Right. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Supervisor Goodman.
More of along the lines of what Supervisor Miller is talking about, because we've got a lot of land that's state land in our county, specifically in my district, and so it's good to see that we're moving in that direction, and the state's working with us on that. And so I think these are great ideas, and I do recommend highly that we move forward with some of the state things. Matt, I just want to say something. You look good on camera. I'm up in Custer, South Dakota. You wear the look of Wild Bill Hickok, and Custer himself very well.
Well, I appreciate the compliments, and I wish I was up there with you.
All right. Jeez. Supervisor Kavanaugh, do you have any comments or questions?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then in that case, we're good. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair and board members.
Item number 6, work session on case PZ-PA-011-22, the county-initiated major comprehensive plan amendment to incorporate wind energy. And I have Mr. Evangelopoulos. Good afternoon. Well, good morning still.
Good morning.
Feels like afternoon. We were warned the last presentation would be boring, and it kind of went so.
Easing off to my okay, I like it. Yeah, that's nice. Board of Supervisors, Mr. Chairman, my name is Evan Evangelopoulos, here with the Planning Division of Pinal County. And I apologize for my shagginess. My barber is about 75 miles away, so I'm going there soon. So I will be talking about the wind energy amendment to the comprehensive plan. It's a request to address wind energy issues and also effectively coordinate alternative energy applications under the energy element section of the Pinal County Comprehensive Plan. Just to let you know, currently the comprehensive plan has no mention of wind energy at all, except under agricultural guidelines. There's just a word mentioned there. And there's a high probability of the county starting receiving wind energy applications. So this is an attempt to provide a tool to the planners and to the county to be able to address those applications. The Pinal County Comprehensive Plan under Chapter 7, Environmental Stewardship, subsection Energy, includes information on solar energy applications but lacks any guidance on wind energy. A comprehensive plan guiding base with goals, objectives, and policies on wind energy would promote quality, safety, and maximum benefits for property owners, desert vistas, the desert environment, and the county overall. Wind energy will diversify energy opportunities for Pinal County residents if they opt to choose one. So this is a little bit more than wind energy, however. It gives us the opportunity to reorganize the energy element within the Pinal County Comprehensive Plan. So currently, the Comprehensive Plan mentions 3 strategic areas, and also there is a 4th one that is discussed in the objectives and policies. But since it's not mentioned in the strategic areas, we are including that and making it a strategic area: conservation, renewable sources, generation and transmission, and heat island mitigation. So this one, you've seen this before. This is just an example of the policies and recommendations that and the objectives that the comprehensive plan will provide if this amendment is approved. For example, county regulatory systems will ensure that renewable energy facilities are discussed, designed, sited, developed, operated, and decommissioned in ways compatible with our communities, the natural environment, and applicable environmental laws. As you see, it gives us some backing for siting, for developing, for addressing any cultural or environmental issues, and ensure consistency, clarity, and timeliness in the development, permitting process for renewable energy generation facilities. And the objectives: expedite the permitting process, provide public information to facilitate installation, establish development code standards, establish procedures and standards in the development code. Pretty basic stuff. Before I move on to questions, first of all, I need to clarify a couple of things, because whenever we talk about wind energy, the first thing that comes to mind is the wind energy farms in Riverside County. But that's not what wind energy is all about. There's 3 different scales of wind energy. One is the small scale facilities for mom and pop stores that they could generate additional energy. The other one is the mid-level, where commercial property or someone could also provide energy to the grid. And the 3rd level is the large scale facilities, the wind farms that we are talking about. And technology is improving really fast. So the smaller scale wind energy technology is really improving fast, and it will start becoming available based on what I'm reading. It's already available, but it's going to be even more efficient the more time passes. And so that's one item that I wanted to mention. And the second one is we had a good discussion with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And one thing that they made us aware of is just to make sure that we're not really promoting wind energy and green energy, but just to make sure that this is just a tool to facilitate the process of application, having and support the county when it addresses such issues. So that's what I wanted to discuss with you. Any questions?
Supervisor Miller, I see your brain going there.
Sure.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well, first of all, do you have a picture or an example of one that's on a residential or one that's on a small business?
I don't, but I will have next time.
Okay.
So I apologize, yes.
Because I took a picture of one in a museum not too long ago. There's a 6-volt generator hooked to a propeller on a farm, which turned on a light bulb. But anyway, I'm very skeptical, particularly of the large units. They don't seem to. I did some math on them. At best, if they ran 24/7, 365, they would maybe produce enough electricity for like 6, 7, maybe 8 households. Mm-hmm. So if you took that over the millions of homes that we have, you'd have windmills everywhere, and they don't run 365, and they don't run, so they're not very productive, and they don't look good against the landscape. That's my personal opinion.
Absolutely.
Some people may love them, but I don't.
So you look like you look like Nebraska and Kansas and Oklahoma.
And it's interesting because 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I was in Custer, where Goodman is right now, and there's some out in that area there because there's wind out there. There's not a lot of wind in Arizona. I worked for a gentleman years ago, and I said, "What made you?" He was from Oklahoma, and I said, "Well, what made you move to Arizona?" He said, "I studied the weather maps and the weather for a year, and Arizona has the least amount of wind of any state in the United States, in the continental United States. So I don't see us as a big producer of wind-generated electricity and I think that's pretty true even today. So anyway, I don't know if we apply standards to this, and I almost think we should consider standards to these solar panels. How much electricity are you really going to produce, and where does it, how does it benefit the individual in Arizona? I mean, probably the last 5 years, there's been lots of investment, a lot of money spent on green energy, and we're barely at 3% of the production in the United States. And so there's a long ways to go if something's going to happen. And I don't know that windmills standing up in the desert are something that's that attractive and produce that much.
That's true, absolutely true. And the one thing to the benefit of the windmills, to be honest with you, is that they do not grade the desert. So unlike solar panels that grade the desert, windmills just are placed in locations.
I get
so,
that, but
that's the only thing.
They knock birds out of the air.
That's true.
And the oil and the components that are in them, when they do go bad, they're a nightmare as far as environmental. They're an environmental disaster, is what they are. So, anyway.
But just to clarify, we're not saying we're going to approve or disapprove any of those
know,
things
I
at
understand.
this time. We're just saying
I just want to set the standard so high.
but just to have policy in place to be able to deal with it. It's just,
Right.
as he says, it's a toolbox. We went to Lowe's or Home Depot and bought a screwdriver. I mean, we're making sure our toolbox is full to be able to handle any requests.
Sorry about my editorial.
It's okay. I feel the same way as you do, so I'm fine. Anyway, okay. Are there any other questions from the board? Supervisor Goodman. I don't hear you.
I had it on mute. A lot of motorcycles running around. I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm with Supervisor Miller on this, and I think some wind proposals were discussed last year. And we looked at a map of the average wind in Pinal County and discovered we would have to dot mountains on the east side of the county to get any usable wind for windmills. So I appreciate Supervisor Miller's remarks and agree with them wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, Mr. Evans?
That's it.
Then thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
All right. Item number, where are we? 7. Presentation discussion regarding the Community Development Department process improvement recommendations from Glancy Consultants. Mr. Billingsley and Mr. Glancy.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I'll be exceptionally brief. First thing I wanted to do was introduce our new Deputy Director, Todd Williams, who's in the audience today. So say hello to Todd when you get a chance. He started Monday. In addition, we have all of our division managers here from the Community Development Department to support their team with respect to the outcome of the Moglancy report. I'm sure, as you're aware, before my time with the county, the board and county manager moved forward hiring a consultant to do an audit of the Community Development Department. Mr. Glancy was the consultant that was hired for that job. He has a lot of experience in government in Arizona in this arena and was phenomenal to work with. Even though I got here at the end of the study. It was completed about 3 months ago, and the study was included as part of the budget request for this year. We've provided a packet to each of the board members today that has 3 things. 1, the Moglancy study. 2, the presentation that Mo is going to go through. And lastly, our internal tracking mechanism for the department in terms of implementation of those recommendations. And with that, I'll turn this over to Mr. Glancy.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, and good morning, Chairman McClure, members of the board. Thanks for this opportunity to kind of go over this study and share with you what I found. All right, so a little bit about the process. We started mid-December of last year and finished up towards the end of February. Started out by meeting with all the members of the board to hear your concerns and suggestions for the department. Met with county management, both in the county manager's office and also all of the directors that are associated with the department, all the managers within the department. Met with a lot of customers provided by you all and by county management, recent customers who have experienced the process, and then met with each of the supervisors in the department. A lot of the staff came in and spent quite a few days in the office just shadowing, watching operations at the counter, asking a bunch of questions. Why do you do this? Attended a whole lot of pre-application meetings, zoning meetings, code hearings, planning commission, just sort of reviewed everything within the department. Also went through the website, looked at all the material that's available, how it's organized, created a customer account on the online portal and simulated submitting permits and finding out what type of information is available there. And then went through historical data and current data to see what the workload is and look for trends. So obviously workload's increased. It's that way pretty much all throughout the Southwest. Your permits are up quite a bit, but the other thing that really noticed was zoning actions and site plans and plats have more than doubled in the last year or two, and so that's an indication of even more work to come. In talking to customers, they were unhappy with review times, but they also felt frustrated in the direction they get provided by some staff. They felt like it's hard to get an answer. Sometimes it takes a long time to get an answer if they even get a call back or return to the email. And that's often the answers are incomplete or inconsistent. The review times, they're longer than what Pinal County has traditionally had, but when you compare them to other agencies in the area, they really aren't that bad, but it's just longer than what people have been used to. I'll talk a little bit more about this one, but that move to digital submittals has really impacted planning and development departments. And just about every department I've looked at, there's a lot of benefits to it, especially on a county this large, that you can submit from anywhere and you can submit at any time. But there are other impacts on productivity and customer service. The site and zoning pre-application process needs improvement. I'll go over that in some more detail. It's the first step in the process, and that's really where you can kind of set the guidelines for people when they're doing development. The Excel permitting system, again, that's something that it's not fully implemented. It's inconsistently implemented and incomplete, and so I think there's a lot of benefits you could get by enhancing that system. And then assessor parcel numbers. You have thousands of new lots every year, and when you're taking months to issue those APNs, they're required for a building permit. The department has come up with a workaround with temporary numbers, but it really does cause rework and impacts to customer service, and so I'll go over that a little bit more as well. The staff were great to work with for my part. They provided me all the information I needed. They were super helpful. They have great attitudes, and they do work hard to assist customers. I think it's very lean. In the other departments I've looked at, or the other agencies I've looked at in the last year or two, Pinal County Community Development is the most lean I've looked at by a long way. And what that does is it forces you to focus on production all of the time, and there's really no time for training staff or for looking at process improvements and that type of thing. And in addition to that, there's been a fair amount of turnover in the department and some positions that have been open for quite a while, hard to fill positions. And so, a compensation study wasn't part of the scope of my work, but I did look at a number of positions, and they appear to be below market value on the pay scale. And so that's something that to look at. I'll go through the recommendations fairly quickly. There's a lot more detail in the report, and I'm happy to go over any of them in more detail that you'd like. And in talking to Mr. Billingsley and the department, they've already implemented quite a few of these recommendations, or they're on their way to it. So the first one, and probably the biggest impact to productivity, is the Acela permitting system. It was partially implemented. It looks like it was sort of implemented in silos, so each different group has different statuses and tasks that they use, which makes reporting for the overall department very difficult. Some of the permits aren't fully in there, so you can't get review times and things like that, so they're tracking stuff in separate spreadsheets. The portal that the customers use to submit permits, that isn't fully implemented either. And so there are a lot of features that Acela offers, like scheduling inspections and checking the status of your permit and things like that, that you can't really do And so we recommend, our recommendation would be to start with a clean installation that just, stick to the out-of-the-box solution as much as you can. Don't customize it a whole lot. That makes upgrades a whole lot easier. It sort of forces you to use the best practices that other agencies use because Acela is very widely used. And it would let you track all of the work that goes on in the department and, get much better reporting. The next item was streamlining the intake and review process. And, the conversion from digital or from online and or from paper and in-person submittals to digital and online, it was a good thing. It allows you to submit from anywhere. You don't have to come in and wait in a line. You can do it on the weekend. You can do it at night. It allows people to review from anywhere. It allows you to not have paper that you have to shift around. But if you look at what the process is like, that intake, the very first part of the process, that's where you sort of struggle. In the old days, people would come in, they'd unroll a set of plans, one or more staff would come out, the customer could ask a bunch of questions, staff could ask questions. You'd get everything out sort of related to the plans and what the project was answered right then and there. The customer would pay a fee and you'd take the plans. And within an hour or two, you've accepted their plan and they're on their way. And you're ready to start the review. How that works now is a customer tries to figure out online what type of submittal to make, tries to figure out what documents are required. They submit it in. A few days later, staff looks at it. If it's missing anything, they email the customer. That goes back and forth 2 or 3 times by email over several days. And then once the application is deemed acceptable, staff sends them an email and says, okay, now you can pay. They pay. Takes another couple of days to figure out they paid and move it forward. So what used to occur within a couple of hours now takes days or weeks. And so you really have to look at it in a new way. And so I made several recommendations on just looking at the process, streamlining that intake process, looking at the minimum submittal requirements, making sure that everything that you need is really necessary for that review. Looking at how many people touch an application, trying to reduce that. It's sort of set up right now that everybody looks at everything, and I think you can put some thought into it at the beginning and say, okay, these types of projects don't need to be reviewed by everybody. And then I think looking at a virtual counter where people can make a submittal and online you can look at the plan with them and answer their questions and sort of replicate that in-person process. Oops. The next one would be enhancing the pre-application process. So this is the very first step in the development process, and it's where departments get to tell the customer or the developer everything that they need to do for their project. And Pinal County has a policy to accept these types of submittals from anybody. It doesn't have to be an architect or an engineer or a zoning attorney. You'll let mom and pops and owners submit those, which is great, except for they don't understand the process. And so you really have to spend a lot more time at the beginning here, laying out all the requirements for the project, more specific communication. Instead of a boilerplate comments, you really need to tell them exactly what they need to do, what permits are going to be required, what the next steps are, and how long it's going to take. And I know the department has made a lot of strides in this regard since I made the study. The next one would be working on the website. I went through all of the pages. There's a lot of good information there. There were a lot of broken links, and I think those have all been addressed. I think making some of the information a little easier to find. Some more how-to documents for those customers who aren't really familiar with the process. And then I would really encourage you to publish your current review times. That ends up being one of the most common questions is when is it going to be done and where's my permit? And if you publish what you're running, it helps set people's expectations right from the start. It reduces a lot of calls and a lot of angst. I talked a little bit about the parcel numbers. When it takes months to get a parcel number, the parcel number is required to issue a permit. So right now what the department is doing is they create a temporary parcel number, they issue the permit, and then when the parcel number actually gets issued, they've got to go back in and change all this information in the permits. You can't issue certificates of occupancy. You hold that up. It's caused problems in customers getting mail when there aren't valid addresses. And so I know that's outside the department's control, but that's something that could really help. The next one is an interesting one. So off-site improvements, work in the right-of-way that's associated with the development, that ends up being inspected by the Public Works Department. But there's not a really good way of communicating where they're at to the the community development department. So say, for instance, you've got to build a road and do a bunch of work in the right-of-way associated with the development. There's not a real good mechanism for communicating, has it been done yet, can we sign off? And on top of that, all of the work that's on-site, so grading and drainage, and I'm not talking about the building, the department inspects the building, but everything that's on the site, the grading and drainage, the accessibility, the site lighting, landscaping, anything like that, you spend a lot of time at the front end of the process making sure that it's included on the plans, but then nobody inspects it. There is no agency that inspects it. And so I would really recommend taking a look at that between the two departments and figuring out a way to get that inspected. The rest of the recommendations are fairly minor. You do about 1,700 solar applications a year, and I think there's some ways to streamline that.
Mr. Clancy, excuse
yes,
me,
sir.
I think there's a question from Supervisor Miller here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just real quick, to your coordinating off-site and on-site improvements, one of the things that I found that we were very negligent in since I've been here is as-built. Do we have a mechanism for as-built with this organization yet?
There's a mechanism, and my understanding, though, is that it's not, that there are some gaps in it.
We got to fix that.
You got to fix that. I mean, because that's one of the requirements is at the end of a job, especially in the work in the public right-of-way, you get as-built because you're now the owner of that work. And
it helps us years later.
Years later,
It helps
yeah.
the developer next door, too, maybe. I mean, there's just a lot of benefit to it.
Exactly. So I think that would definitely be included as part of this.
Okay.
Are there any other questions before we go on? Hearing none. Did you have one? Okay. Hearing none, then please proceed. Thank you.
So these, like I said, the manufactured homes, that's an interesting one because it's a joint responsibility between the state and the county. And I just recommended getting together with them because there was a little bit of confusion over who reviews and inspects what. I think that part's already been taken care of from talking to the department. And then, as I mentioned, this department has been so focused on production that there hasn't been much time to train staff or to even develop training manuals. And I think if you can spend some time doing that, and then once you've trained people, set expectations and monitor their performance, it really does have a major impact on productivity. And it makes staff feel more comfortable. I think looking at virtual inspections, it's a very large county. Your inspectors have a ton of travel time. Everybody's got mobile phones now. If you're in an area that has a good cell signal or Wi-Fi, there are a lot of agencies that have gone to some mobile inspections or virtual inspections for minor stuff. Say you go out and you do an inspection and they're missing one or two things, and you say, you know what, call me back. I'll look at it on your phone. You can show me that it's done, and I can sign it off. I don't have to spend an hour driving back out there and back. The zoning ordinance, I understand that the county is in the process of reviewing the zoning ordinance. I think there are a few things that you can do there, certainly to make it easier for developers and for staff to understand what's going on. One of the big ones is defining the setback. Pinal County defines the setback to the eave of the building. Most agencies define it to the wall of the building, and that's how you build a building. And it just causes a whole lot of confusion for people when it's to the eave. So that's one thing I would look at changing. And then your septic records. Anytime somebody buys a new house or wants to add on to their house, they've got to do research as to what's the existing septic system. You have all that information already saved and it's digital. I would allow the customers to go in there and do that research for themselves, and that would save a bunch of staff time in doing that research for them. The rest of the recommendations are related to staffing, and I know it's a delicate one because it feels to me at least like we're closer to the end of a cycle than the beginning of a cycle. And so the recommendations that I made were really very conservative. In many of these areas, I would have, when examining the workload, it would look like you'd need quite a few more people. So I was sort of on the conservative end of that, and I'll go over each of these individually. But in addition to that, I think that the county, certainly the department, but probably the county overall, might want to look at some of the ways that they do recruiting to fill some of these hard-to-fill positions. Getting more creative in how you try to talk people into coming. And it's very competitive out there right now. You're not the only one dealing with this. As I mentioned, some of the salaries you probably need to evaluate some of the salaries. You're competing with a bunch of other cities and towns. And if you're not competitive, it's hard to get people to come. And then increasing the use of third-party assistance. And I know the department has already done this, but it really allows you to balance your workload when you have temporary vacancies or increases in workload. It allows you to up and down your capacity. But it also, if things slow down, it allows you to cut back on that without cutting staff. So the positions that we were recommending, the most common complaint that I heard from customers was just this inability to get an answer or to understand what they need to do. And so we're recommending an ombudsman, which is, would be that contact person for people who are struggling to get through the department. Could also be a liaison with the Board of Supervisors for when your constituents are having issues. They can go and do the research as to what's going on behind here and get people an answer. And by doing that, they also identify bottlenecks in the system and can recommend changes and improvements. The Acela technician, all the enhancements that are going to be required to Acela is a big lift, and so I think you need some staffing to accomplish that. Building safety is probably the area that was the leanest, the lowest staffed of all the groups I looked at, and it's just, when you imagine a plan reviewer at the current staffing level would have to do 5 plan reviews a day, and if you're looking at new houses and commercial buildings and things like that, you just can't do a good job with that. Same thing with the inspectors. 12 stops and 21 inspections a day is what they're running right now. And with the amount of drive time you have, it's very difficult. So we recommended a plans examiner and a building inspector, and I believe you guys may have already approved those positions. And a permit technician, it was an optional. I believe if you incorporate some of the recommendations, you may be able to, with streamlining, get by without that. But again, the use of contract plan review and inspections, I think, is critical. On the planning side, your zoning applications, your pre-applications, your site plans, lot divisions have all gone through the roof. I think also adding a planner senior would enable you to spend some more time on long-range planning. Right now, the staff really doesn't have any time to spend on long-range planning. And then this improvements to the pre-application practice that we're talking about.
One question, sir.
Not a question, I have a comment. I think the ombudsman's a good idea, but I don't think he would have any authority. And as it is now, it's very impressive when we go to either Brent or like we did with Lester, and you guys get right on it, and everybody appreciates when you get on it. So you'd need to know I think he'd be in like the non-emergency, matter-of-fact type deals. Hey, this could be nice, but when we have a citizen that has a problem right now, I really appreciate the response that you give it.
And just from experience where I've seen this implemented in other agencies, I would recommend that ombudsman report to the director, and when they go and talk to people, they typically get answers very quickly. And a lot of times they can tee up all the information for the director to make that decision. So like you said, they don't really have the authority, but they can gather all the information and get it out there quickly. And like you said, on the less emergency ones, they're certainly good at dealing with customers.
Streamline the process a little bit.
Yeah, and what happens is when you're constantly seeing these issues, it points out where the bottlenecks are, and you can kind of go to the director and say, hey, this happens all the time. Can we fix this? It's just one person that can see that.
Any other Supervisor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ombudsman actually goes clear back to Greg Stanley, a former and I said, that's what you need. And he says, you're right, Steve. That's what we need. I hope we implement it. And I'll tell you why. I think one of the things with an ombudsman we could do is we can assign them some of those more difficult jobs that they will be able to report to us and monitor it all the way through and just be able to eliminate some of those phone calls to staff that's trying to get some work done. So I think there's some advantages to somebody like that, and also help with the just the workflow. And help prioritize some stuff. I think there's times that needs to be looked at. On the permit technician, can I just ask a quick question? That's back a page or two. But that person could also help with the intake of projects, I think, at the counter. Do you not? I think that somebody that's really detailed on, no, you need to still get this. Okay, you've got everything here. That assurance that when it's received and it can go forward.
Yes, Supervisor Miller, that's exactly what the permit technician would do.
Yeah.
They work on that front end and help get plans in the system, and the more you can get that staff educated on flexibility and what you can get by without, and what make it better to explain to customers what they need, and so they are definitely on that front end at getting the plans in.
So, may I continue? On the civil engineer, I say that was one of the positions you had there back.
That's my next slide. So perfect.
Well, we have so do we have one at all? Are we using anybody? What's the plan there, Brett?
Well, it's complicated. In years past, you had a supervisor of the civil group, which was Lester. When Lester got promoted, he still served in that capacity. Once Lester got promoted, he came to the board and asked to refill his old position. So there was funding set aside, not just in the current budget, but the previous budget and the previous budget. So we've had that position advertised for 15 months. We've gotten 2 applications in 15 months. One applicant was qualified. The other applicant was not qualified. We interviewed the individual. They weren't a good fit with our team. We're not getting any applications, and we badly need to fill that position. From talking with HR, money is our issue. We're going to have to bump that up, and it's a critical position because as it stands now, I don't have APE. I don't have a professional engineer, but I have a whole engineering staff doing plan review. So we work hand in hand with Chris in Public Works, who's the county engineer,
right.
To assist us and be our PE in terms of signatory.
Okay, well, because my developer friends call me, and I've been picking up on the civil side of things as being one of these bottlenecks in our operation. Do we, or can we, at least temporarily, go to outside engineering firms to handle that review for us?
That's exactly what we're doing right now. Is we have engineering firms under contract that are serving the services for us.
Yeah. Okay, and it's all really, an engineer designed it. We just have an engineer reviewing it, checking his math, basically, is what it amounts to, if I'm correct.
I wish it was that easy. But
are these guys trying to get away with something?
Of course. Let's not say get away with things. I think it's the industry itself in development is so busy in Arizona that the same level of attention to detail that is performed in a less busy time is not followed in this world.
I get it. I understand. Well, thank you.
And I'm an engineer, so we try our best, but you still make mistakes sometimes. And the other thing that I think is important to point out about it is, there are a lot of rules and regulations that are specific to your area, and your staff knows that better. And if I could just throw one more plug in on why I think it's important to have a PE on the staff, it gives the staff, in addition to being able to train the staff and help bring them up to speed, having that engineer with their experience and knowledge, they can be more flexible on developments. They can understand where you can give and take, and I think it really does facilitate development.
I agree. Well, hopefully we can work that out for you.
Okay.
Brent?
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none, please proceed. Thank you.
Okay, and then the last position was a environmental health specialist senior in the Aquifer Protection Program. And, the work in that group, they're keeping up. I don't know how. They work really, really hard. But the septic permit applications are up 68%. And they have, I think they've got 3 health specialists and a supervisor doing all the reviews and inspections for the entire county. So any septic system in the county.
It's up over 100% now.
Okay, over 100% now. It's going, and you're getting more and more complex systems as well. And so, not to compare you with other counties, but I just finished a review of another county that does a similar number of septic permits, and they have twice as many staff, and they're having a hard time keeping up. So what you guys have done to keep up is pretty amazing.
Excuse me, out of curiosity, 100% of 0 is 0, 100% of something is another number. I get that, but just for edification, what kind of numbers are we talking about?
I can look it up.
To a year. We went from 450 2 years ago to over 900 this year.
That's just for the public's knowledge, so thank you.
Okay, and so that's all I had for you. Can I answer any questions?
Are there any questions from the board?
Mr. Chair, this is Supervisor Goodman.
Go ahead, Supervisor Goodman.
Hey, thank you. In regards to the APNs, I think one thing that we should be clarified on this is that RPN numbers come directly from the assessor's office. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that's probably another discussion down the road, but we probably ought to find a way to help that department out or that elected official. So anyway, just wanted to bring that out. Thank you.
I'm sure the dike has many other leaks, and we'll be plugging them as we go. Mr. Clancy, thank you very much for your comprehensive report. I appreciate it. Mr. Billingsley, you have something to...
I just had one thing in closing, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman, the board, and Mr. Liu. We have some very hardworking and dedicated individuals that work in this department. They work incredibly hard. We have folks now working on their flex days for overtime to try and keep up, and I acknowledge that we're behind on our review schedules. But to give you an idea of the amount of work that this department is doing, and this is just one example, is from a building permit perspective, we are the fastest and busiest entity in terms of counties, cities, and towns in all of Arizona. Just this month, we, as Pinal County, processed, and this is from the Central Arizona Home Builders Association, we processed 324 single-family permits this month. The next closest to us is a long ways from us, and that's the city of Phoenix with 244. So you have a department that's probably a tenth of the size of the city of Phoenix. Maricopa County's is 248. And we're doing substantially more work than those entities. And it's not just isolated to the most recent month. We were second fastest growing the previous month. We were second fastest growing the previous month. There are reductions throughout the state in terms of permit totals from 21 to 22. We've stayed even. Every other city in Pinal County has seen significant reductions, except for Pinal County. So very proud of this team, very proud of these folks, and they're doing an excellent job and still providing excellent customer service.
Thank you for all your hard work. Did you want to introduce the band in the back?
Everybody knows them.
Everybody knows. Okay.
They probably don't want to be introduced. Okay. They'll probably be embarrassed to leave. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Chairman, well,
thank you. Supervisor Miller.
Just, the program, Acela, we'd like to be able to field off some of those calls for you. So I don't know, we need to get Mike up to speed to where he can look somebody's permit up, and we don't want to be putting anything in, but if we can just be kind of that ombudsman at the local offices, it could help as well to field out some of the calls for you guys.
There's a training next week, I think. The
are they?
Okay.
Yeah, I love it, Supervisor, that you brought that up, because one of the things I've done recently is get access to all of the staff at the district offices. And as Mr. McClure said, there's a training on the 15th and the 16th of August for all the staff. Okay. So we're looking forward to bringing your folks in and doing some training, and man, that'll take a lot of work off our table answering questions. So we appreciate it.
I'm just the supervisor. I don't know that.
You don't. I mean, what do you know, right? Exactly. Okay. Are there any other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Liu.
Yeah, and maybe for Mr. Billingsley. Obviously, we were knowing how these recommendations were developing as they were occurring. And so a lot of the positions were in the budget that you approved, if not all.
Four
of them?
4 of the 9. Yes, sir.
4 of the 9. Okay. Yeah, and we are already recruiting and in process for, we're not calling it an ombudsman because nobody knows how to spell it. So we're calling it I think it's a
Development Customer Manager.
Development Services Customer Manager.
Too many words.
Okay. So that'll be what that is. What that person will be.
So we'll just call him the ombudsman when we see him.
We can.
Okay, thank you. All right,
so we'll give you updates on fulfillment of these recommendations as we go. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
I believe Supervisor Surdy said we'll just call him Bud. There you go. Okay.
Bud, that's the new name.
Thank you, Planning and Development, for all you do. We appreciate it. All right, next item is number 8, which is discussion, approval. I cannot speak this morning. Discussion, approval, disapproval to increase District 1's fiscal year 2022-2023 budget capacity by $18,082. Supervisor Kavanaugh is requested to withdraw this item. His budget is now at baseline. And I would ask if Supervisor Kavanaugh has anything to say, or if any of the board have any questions.
I have nothing. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Kavanaugh. Any questions from the board? In that case, I'd ask for a motion to withdraw item number 8 from the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to withdraw item number 8 from the agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, the item is removed. Thank you very much. Item number 9, discussion, approval, disapproval of Pinal County waiving all costs for the August 2nd, 2022 local elections for the following jurisdictions: City of Maricopa, Town of Queen Creek, City of Casa Grande, Town of Superior, Town of Mammoth, City of Apache Junction, and City of Eloy. And I believe, Scott.
Mr. Chairman, just if I could open this, we obviously did not live up to our customers' expectations, nor did we live up to our own expectations in this regard. And so we're proposing to waive the reimbursement of the fees we would normally charge in these intergovernmental agreements for the local cities and towns elections. The 7 listed are the ones that were affected by the muni-only ballot. But what we're looking at is waiving the fees for all of the local municipalities and jurisdictions within the county, since some of those were affected by the ballot shortages at the polling places as well. And I think Mr. Volkmer was going to attest to that, and I think Mr. Keller has some language that we could adjust this item on.
Mr. Volkmer.
Mr.
I'm sorry. Mr. Keller, Mr. Volkmer. One of you,
Okay, I'm good. Ken Volkmer, Pinal County Attorney, Board, Mr. Chair. As we've discussed earlier and previously, we are vendors for the municipal elections. The various cities and towns come to us. They enter into really a contract with us, which is the IGA. In exchange for compensation, we administer the elections in their entirety. As their county manager clearly indicated, we fell below the expectations of our customers. Initially, it was the 63,000 ballots that were the 7 impacted municipalities, but obviously on election day we had ballot issues as well. I was able to go through, based on a preliminary report that's not been finalized, but I've been able to look at all of the requested precincts that had made requests for additional ballots or were concerned about running low. It turns out that even the 2 unimpacted municipalities did in fact run low on ballots, and there were 2 districts that fell within their precinct, or 2 precincts that fell within their district that had to request additional ballots. So I believe if this board is so inclined, I think there is good cause to waive for all of the various entities that we serve the municipal and town elections for. Obviously, it's the board's discretion. We can't just willy-nilly give stuff away. There is some gift clause analysis, but because they were impacted, they were harmed, we didn't live up to our expectation, and I was able to validate that this morning. If the board so desires, it would be well within this board's discretion to waive those fees for all municipal and town elections.
I think that's a good idea due to the issues at hand. Mr. Keller, did you have Mr. Keller, did you have some language?
Mr. Chairman, I do, and I am sending it over to Natasha right now, and I'm happy to read it into the record for you in just 1 second.
As Mr. Keller's finishing up, Chairman, just the estimated amount is about just a little over $100,000 for the waiving of these costs.
That was a question. Are there any other questions? Are there any questions from the board, actually? Any comments? Hearing none. Mr. Keller, please.
Mr. Chairman, what I would recommend is that after, in the second line of your motion there, basically the motion would say, discussion, approval, disapproval of Pinal County waiving all costs for the August 2nd, 2022 local elections for all local jurisdictions that utilize Pinal County to conduct their election, period.
Thank you. Okay, so if there are no questions from the board, hearing none, I'd ask for a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, can we use what he just read into the record as the motion?
Mr. Chairman, you can, and I can restate that again just for the public and make sure that the clerk has it down. The motion would be to approve Pinal County waiving all costs for the August 2nd, 2022 local elections for all local jurisdictions that utilize Pinal County to conduct their election, period.
I would
so
second
moved.
Mr.
I have a motion.
I would second Mr.
And I have a second.
Miller's motion. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Volkmer. Item 10 is a discussion and update with possible action on the Pinal County 2022 primary election processes, handling, follow-up, and action. Mr. Volkmer. Oh, and I'm sorry, I have to mention that Virginia Ross will be should be in telephonically on this item.
Yes, Chairman. Virginia?
Yes.
Here we are. Please
So,
proceed.
Chairman, with your permission, really this is designed to be an update for the board and the community at large. Since we last met last week, there's been some fairly significant changes, and I think everybody needs to be made aware of those. I guess I would begin with there has been a number of calls for an investigation of some sort. I think it's vital that we sort of define some terms. An investigation is typically, you think of like a criminal investigation. What we're looking at doing, at least initially, is what we're calling an administrative review. The administrative review would lead to a report, at least this is what we're proposing, that would be available to the board and ultimately, with the board's permission, made available to the public. The investigation portion, we're really limiting that term for any potential criminal liability. At this point, we've not found anything that would suggest that exists, but I know that I've spoken with our sheriff, Mark Lamb, and his team. If ultimately there is a belief that there's any kind of criminal action afoot, they stand ready, willing, and able to do any criminal investigation. But for the administrative review portion, we really don't want law enforcement doing that portion of it. It's not that they're not skilled, it's not that they're not talented, but when a uniformed cop sits down and asks you questions, people tend to get very, very nervous, and they tend to not want to answer any questions. Instead, what we believe a better process to do is to actually work with an outside law firm, which we've been in communication with throughout, starting clear back to the 63,000 ballot issue, and work with them to hire an elections expert. That elections expert is going to do this administrative review, and what we anticipate getting out of this is what went wrong, why it went wrong, and then what can we do to make sure that this does not happen again. Now, we do have a particular elections expert that has been identified. We're currently in negotiations with this individual. I know we've spoken with Ms. Ross and Ms. Lewis both. They are aware of this individual. They've worked with this individual before. I will tell you it's a gentleman. He has, I believe, almost 30 years of being an election director in multiple jurisdictions. He's actually had an investigation done similar to this, or an administrative review done, so he's familiar with what we're looking for and what we really need. Our intention is to engage with this individual very, very shortly. Obviously, we don't have a ton of time till our next election. This isn't something that we're, an FBI investigation that we're looking, 24 to 30 months out. We're actually looking at, hopefully in very short order, within the next 30 to 60 days, having a report that we can present to this board. Just trying to make sure that I sort of cover all of our bases. I can tell you that since this, I guess, Miss Virginia Ross's appointment as the elections director, and then this board's appointment of Miss Lewis as the recorder, they've been working like banshees. There's no way to describe it. I mean, you're talking 11:30, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, processing ballots. There were a number of shortcomings that were identified immediately when they came in. They were able to identify those shortcomings. They were able to address those shortcomings. And when they're doing all of this, they're also pulling all kinds of information that my office has been requesting, because we know this administrative review is coming forward, so we're starting to gather the information to speed the process up. So they've been identifying all the impacted precincts. They've really been running two jobs at the same time, and I really think it's important that the public and this board know how hard both Ms. Ross and Ms. Lewis have really been working. They've been absolute champions for this county, and everybody should be quite proud. I think my opinion, again, not as a county attorney, but as just Kent, that the decision that this board made to act quickly and swiftly was vital. I am confident as I sit here now putting my county attorney hat back on, if you would have waited another week or 2 weeks, we would not be in the position we're in right now. This is scheduled as a possible action item. We were, I think, naively hoping that perhaps we would have been able to actually bring forward the final votes in the final ballot so you could do your canvass today. That's not possible, so there's really not an action item to take today, but that is scheduled for Friday. So we will be back before you on Friday where we will be asking the board to go ahead and canvass. With that, I'll really stand for questions. I mean, I know Supervisor Surdy has got a number of questions. I know we've spoken on numerous occasions, so it may be easier if we just have a dialogue at this point.
Okay. Supervisor Surdy, you have a question, comment?
Well, I do. I just want to remind everybody and those watching online that next Wednesday, you mentioned over and over the shortcomings that they're finding. We need to be transparent on that and let everybody know what they are finding. And also, I think there's probably some things that happened that they're not aware of, we're not aware of. So we do want to hear from the poll workers, people that were turned away, et cetera. And next Wednesday, we weren't even scheduled to have a meeting, but we're going to have this special meeting. None of this other boring county business on it, just this. So starting at 9:30, we'll just go right into this. And I think we'll all come out of that knowing a lot more than we even know today. And I also think that you have some solutions that we're going to be rolling out next week as well.
Correct.
So,
Chair, if I can respond, just to give Supervisor Surdy's comments some context. If everybody recalls, we were here last Wednesday. There was a press conference. You took a break about 1:30. At that time, there were about 49,000 total votes that had been tabulated, and we were told there was only 8,000 left to tabulate. We're at almost 80,000. Ms. Ross was immediately able to come in and say, no, you've got to count these, you've got to count these, you've got to count these. Nothing wrong, nothing irregular, but there was just information that was not being properly provided to the people that needed to know, the people that were speaking with you, that were speaking with the public. I would encourage that anybody that's following, Ms. Ross and her team were doing updates, I think, 2 or 3 times a day. These are how many ballots are remaining. These are the types of ballots that are remaining, and the information has been continually being updated. Those are the type of things that we did not know last Wednesday that have materially changed. And again, my belief is had Ms. Ross not been appointed, had not someone who understood the process and where everything is located and how the polling books work and all of that not been there, we would have been in a very serious spot. I am confident that with Ms. Ross and Ms. Lewis at the helm, things are being done properly. In fact, I had conversations with county management today regarding all the provisional ballots and the processes that went through. And frankly, their diligence is a testament to the character of both of those women.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Supervisor Goodman?
I do have some more.
Supervisor?
I'm good. No, that's some good information, and thank you for next week. This will be good. Thank you.
Supervisor Kavanaugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Volkmer, you said that the sheriff's office stands ready to conduct a criminal investigation. Is there any indication whatsoever that anything criminal occurred?
Thank you, Supervisor. Chair, to the best of our understanding at this point, it appears that it was incompetence as opposed to criminal intent. However, if this board recalls, there were very specific allegations that were made by some of the poll workers and some of the people that we are currently exploring. If some of those allegations bared fruit, it is possible, but at this point we have not seen anything to suggest that there is criminal intent, but that's why we're bringing the outside person out. Just quite candidly, this is outside of the expertise of myself and my office. This is outside of the expertise of the people that are typically in here. So we're bringing a true expert in that will be able to essentially, they're not going to be able to determine that there's criminal, but they'll determine that this is so far afield that a criminal investigation would be warranted.
Could be.
But as we sit here right now, I cannot say that that is necessary, but I will again say that I've spoken with the sheriff and they're ready as soon as we give them any information if deemed warranted.
Thank you.
Supervisor Surdy.
So we're going to be back here on Friday, and I imagine you're going to explain it all then. but legally, the repercussions of not accepting the canvas. Explain what it is we would be doing, because I've had a lot of citizens say, you can't accept this. Explain the whole process on that and what it actually means. Because my first initial after the day after, I said, I'm not going to accept these results. So can you explain, yes or no, what happens if we don't? Are we even really accepting anything? So it's very confusing still, and I think if we don't address this, we're going to have more questions.
That's a very complicated question. It seems like it should be simple, and it's not. First, we have to distinguish between the municipal ballots and the municipal local elections races and the other races. This board plays no role in canvassing or certifying the municipal races. That is up to the individual municipalities and the individual towns and cities. They're the ones that canvass their own results. We don't do anything with those. We canvass all of the county, state, federal, all of those elections. I will tell this board, and this is always not a comfortable conversation, but our legal analysis is you have no choice but to canvass. It is what's deemed a ministerial duty, meaning you have to. It's a shall. As long as X, Y, and Z are done, there's not, hey, I don't think this is right. You are statutorily compelled to do so. If you don't, I don't know what would happen. What would likely happen, again, speaking off the cuff, is a citizen would probably come forward, or more likely a candidate would come forward, and they would probably initiate a suit in which the court would compel you legally to canvass. Because it's not a, hey, we think this is fair. When you canvass, it isn't your signing off saying, hey, we think this was a great election, we are perfect. It is a ministerial duty because of your role as the Board of Supervisors. Statutorily, you're required to canvass it, but you're not given the authority to say yay or nay. It is a shall. It is a no discretion. You must do it. To do so, to not do so would be in violation of state statute, and I don't know that it would subject you to criminal prosecution, but I don't know. That's something that we're currently evaluating. I can tell you that our local municipalities are evaluating the same thing, because this board's not the only one that has this concern. I've spoken with local council for some of our city's municipalities, and the city councils and town councils are asking the same thing. Our analysis has been consistent that it's ministerial at this point, meaning you don't have the discretion not to.
So next Wednesday, there's going to be more folks here that aren't here and more folks probably watching. So you may well have to revisit that statement you just made and explain it once more.
Chair, Vice Chair, just so you're clear, the canvassing, though, is actually scheduled for Friday.
Right, but Wednesday is that's when more people will. Not everybody watches every minute of these meetings, so.
Really don't? What?
I understand. I just wanted to make sure by the time we come Wednesday, in all likelihood, it would be canvassed, provided that Virginia and her team is able to finalize and get the information to you. We get the 24 hours notice, et cetera.
Supervisor Goodman.
Yes, and I appreciate it. But I have a question, Kent, and I don't expect an answer now, but between now and Friday, maybe you can help me out on this one. And I would imagine there's a lot of people who are listening who probably have the same question. It's almost like we're rubber stamping then something that may or may not be correct. And it's almost like a rubber stamp that legislatively we have to do. I don't get that. I don't understand that. And so I know it's probably a question that you can't answer right now, but I'd like a further explanation as to why it's set to even that we have to canvass at any point if it's just going to be a rubber stamp of some type.
Go ahead.
Chair, again, it's Supervisor Goodman. It's a very complicated issue. What I want to read to you just very briefly is really what canvassing is, so we're all kind of talking about the same thing. The purpose of the canvass is to officially certify the election. The canvass includes vote totals for all races tabulated by voting equipment, including early ballots, regular ballots, and provisional ballots, and write-in votes. So what you're doing is saying this is the total number, certifying these are the total number of votes that were cast. The Board of Supervisors has a, quote, non-discretionary duty to canvass the returns as provided by the county recorder or other officer in charge of elections and has, quote, no authority to change vote totals or reject the election results. That is what is in the elections manual and in statute. So you're asking me to explain essentially the unexplainable. Unfortunately, we're always obligated to do certain things just as a matter of fact, and that's why there's that term called ministerial act. It really is a rubber stamp in this case, as long as the votes are accurate. And then I would add that the Secretary of State, after we canvass and certify, the Secretary of State does look at it, and that would not prohibit a potential challenge. Obviously, we're hoping not to see a challenge, but it would not prohibit somebody from challenging the ultimate results where the fairness of potentially the election could be challenged at a different time. You're just saying, hey, these are all the votes that were cast, and these are the tabulation of those results.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Goodman?
It helps a little bit. I still, because it does have to do with whether or not these votes, all the votes that got in were actually counted. That's some of the questions that I know some of the people that are out there. But then again, I like the distinction of what you said earlier. We're not canvassing the municipalities. We're only canvassing what the county's election and the state and federal elections were all about, not what the municipalities. That's up to them to do that.
Okay.
So, just a better understanding of it for the public is really what needs to happen. So, thank you.
Mr. Keller, did you have a comment?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to add something, that Kent was trying to get to at this point. The purpose also of the canvass is you need to have that done before any candidate could go ahead and bring a challenge to those numbers, whether it is someone who has a write-in in a municipal election. It's not until it's been canvassed that someone can then bring a challenge to those numbers in court to say, I want to recount. So, that is one of the other essences of why you need to canvass and why it's a ministerial duty, is to get to that next point. Should any candidate want to go ahead and challenge his numbers, or whether XYZ person won or not?
Makes sense. Very good. Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
No, that helps out a lot, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Kavanaugh, do you have any questions?
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Volkmer, anything else?
The only thing I would really ask for the board is if the board collectively has concerns regarding bringing in an outside person and a professional and expert to do the sort of after-action report that we were discussing, please tell us now. I will tell you it's not cheap. You have to bring somebody in that has the skill. We are working with outside counsel. Again, it's outside of our direct skill set, and quite frankly, I think we need an outside set of eyes, so there's no allegation or suggestion that we're somehow trying to insulate the county or to try and put a shine on things to make it look as good as possible, because that's my responsibility as the county attorney. We believe, and I believe, that this is the most transparent and the most appropriate way to proceed forward. But if this board's not okay with it, I would ask you to sort of speak up now so we don't get too far down that path.
I think it's good for the public to see that we're stepping aside. That's it. So any other comments? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. See you very soon, I'm sure. Or before. All right. With that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.